Okay, so here are the math journal pages. I'm on page 232, and we are going to be talking about baking muffins. So we're going to be using our knowledge of adding and multiplying fractions and applying them to a recipe. So it says Suma and her sister Pooja are baking 12 blueberry wheat muffins for breakfast. The recipe lists the following ingredients: 1 cup white flour, half a cup whole wheat flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/4 cup blueberries, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1 egg, 1/2 cup skim milk, 2/3 cup honey, 1/4 cup cooking oil, 3/8 teaspoon of cinnamon. Okay, so let's look. It says solve the number stories in the space below each problem. Use pictures or equations to show what you did to find your answer. The sisters want to triple the recipe. They want to triple the recipe. What does that mean? That means we have to multiply every ingredient times 3. That's what triple means. So A, how many teaspoons of baking powder do they need now? So we are going to only be focusing on the baking powder, and they need 2 teaspoons of baking powder in the original recipe. But now we have to triple it. Times 3, and you get 6. 6 teaspoons of baking powder is what they need when they triple the recipe. B, how many teaspoons of salt do they need now? So let's look how much salt they need. 1/4 of a teaspoon. So 3 times 1/4 of a teaspoon. Remember, you're going to multiply the whole number and the numerator, and you get 3/4. Or you could have done repeated addition. 1/4 3 times. Either way, you get the same answer. They need 3/4 of a teaspoon. How many cups of whole wheat flour do they need now? So they need 1/2 cup of whole wheat flour. So you could do repeated addition. Which would give you 3/2. Or you could have done 3 times 1/2, which would give you 3/2. And I know that's an improper fraction, so I could take out a whole, and I'm left with 1 and 1/2. So they need 1 and 1/2 cups of whole wheat flour. Between what two numbers does your answer to problem 1C lie? So if I were to plot 1 and 1/2 on a number line, it would be halfway between 1 and 2. So the whole numbers would be 1 and 2. Okay, let's look at the next page. Pooja and Suma decide to bake 48 muffins instead of 12. So now here we have to do a little math. 48 muffins. And I know the original recipe is 12. 48 is a multiple of 12. So what times 12 would give us 48? Well, I know 12 times 2 is 24, 12 times 3 is 36, and 12 times 4 is equal to 48. So you need to quadruple the recipe to make 48 muffins. You need to multiply by 4. Okay, so let's look. How many cups of blueberries did they use? So let's go back. 3/4 cup of blueberries. Now you could do this 2 different ways. You could do fraction circles and split them into fourths. And I know that each batch is going to need 3/4. So there are the 3/4 for batch 1. Here are the 3/4 for batch 2. Here are the 3/4 for batch 3. And here are the 3/4 for batch 4. So I could see that it's 3 wholes 3 whole numbers. You could do 4 times 3/4, which, remember, you multiply 4 times 3, and you get 12/4, which is equal to 3. So they need 3 cups of blueberries for their 48 muffins. So this is an example of where when you multiply a whole number times a fraction, it comes out as a whole number. It comes out as even. An even 3 cups. Nothing extra. How many teaspoons of cinnamon did they use? So let's look back. 3/8 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. So they need 4 times the original recipe, which is 3/8. So 4 times 3 is 12/8. Now I know that 8 times 2 is 16. So I can't take 2 wholes out, but I could take 1. 8 times 1 is 8. And then I have to subtract 12 minus 8 is 4. So 1 4/8 of a teaspoon. You also could have written this as 1 1/2. If you did it that way too, that's fine. How many cups of honey did they use? They used 2/3 cup of honey. So 4 times 2/3. And I'm going to multiply 4 times 2, which is 8/3. And then I can make that into a mixed number, which is 2 2/3. I also could have done this using repeated addition. So you need 2 2/3 cups of honey. Between what 2 whole numbers does your answer to problem 2C lie? Well, I know that it's in between 2 and 3, because it's a little bit more than 2, but it's not quite 3. Okay, number 3, the bonus. Try this. It says sisters used 1 1/2 cups of cooking oil. How many batches of muffins did they bake? Well, let's look back at the original recipe, and I know that they need 1 1/4 cup of cooking oil in the original recipe. So let's think about it. They need, or they're using 1 1/2 cups of cooking oil. So now I'm going to pretend with these dotted lines that this is split up into fourths. So I know that they're using 1 1/2. So let me see how many fourths are in 1 1/2. And I can zoom in even bigger. So 1/4. Let me make my pen a little smaller so it doesn't get too squished. Now, every 1/4 represents 1 batch of muffins. And I highlighted how many cups of cooking oil they used all together. So if every batch needs 1/4, how many 1/4 did I color in? And if I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They used 1 1/2 cups of cooking oil in 6 batches of muffins. So if one batch needs 1/4 cup of oil, then they need 6/4 or 1 1/2 oil for 6 batches. Okay, I hope that made these math pages a little bit more clear. I'm going to go over the math boxes in the next video.